some random reason, she associates Pisco with me, which I think is sweet. I don't know why, actually. I think she just has a random memory of me in the past bringing up Pisco. So it's not something I drink often, but she associates it with me. And she saw some at the store and she bought it, and we made Pisco sours, which again I don't drink often, but they are delicious. And this friend, something really lovely about her is that she always comes bearing gifts, like lots of little things that she thinks you'll like. So she brought Pisco, and she makes her own dry shampoo. So she brought me a little canister of that. And she has a really excellent garden that she's cultivated over the years. And if there's fruit in season, she'll bring that, like lemons or oranges or kumquats, which at this time of year did not happen, but she's done that in the past, which is, I just like that about her. She's very flaky and also generous and also playful and kooky. And we've been friends for a long time. We met the end of freshman year of college. So it was really good to see her. And she's very, very, very funny too. After dinner we played cards. That was fun. And we talked a little bit. It's loosely related to this thing I thought I might ramble about. That really is neither here nor there. But my dog, I have a little dog, if you did not know. And her name is Kit. K-I-T. Kit. Actually, her name in some ways is kind of like a personality test or something. Like, it's not, okay, that wasn't the intention, but some people will be like, oh, Kit, like the car in Blade Runner, or oh, Kit, like the little sister in A League of Their Own. Oh, Kit, like so-and-so. And whatever reference they bring up, you can tell a lot about a person. The American Girl doll, for example. Anyway, I was joking with my friend about how my partner and we have this dog, obviously. But she's an indifferent observer, is what they call this behavior in huskies and other dogs, where she just sits and watches, and she'll sit and watch us when we're eating, kind of hoping for food, not quite begging, not quite making a scene, but she'll be there hoping for some crumbs or whatever. And so my partner and I had made up this like children's book we want to write. Not really, like we don't really want to write it, but we just add to it from time to time. So it goes like this because the rhythm of it just feels like children's book-y. So I was telling my friend, it's like, Mauve had a Danish, and it was very Danish, and Kit got none. Mauve's partner had a dart, and it was very dart, and Kit got none. So it's just like us eating stuff and describing it in a really stupid way, and Kit got none. And then at the end of the book, we don't know what it is, but it's like, do-do-do, eat da-da-da. And instead of and Kit got none, it'll be and Kit got some, like she finally got some for just sticking around. Like eventually a crumb will fall, right? But I was telling my friend this as she was leaving, and she was like, rightly so. She was like, but all children's books have teachable moments in them, first of all. I love that I was just joking around, like, and Kit got none, and Kit got none, and Kit got some. But I love that she like, no, maybe it's like cleaning, like keeping your kitchen clean. I don't know what I'm talking about, you guys, but the point is, she was like, you need a teachable moment for it to be a modern day like children's book. And I was like, okay. Anyway, and she was leaving and I said goodbye, and that was that. Then this week I've been reading a lot about fairy tales. And let me back up. So she said all children's books have a teachable moment, but I was also thinking about children's books I've seen in museum gift stores and places like that recently. I don't know if you've seen this, but there are these books where it's like a little square, like a little gray square goes on a walk up a hill, and then his little gray circle friend is like stuck in a hole, and he's gonna help her, so he walks away. Then he comes back and the circle's not there anymore, and then that's the end of the book. That's the end. And I just found that funny for some reason. Like, it's almost like zazen kind of thing. Like, it barely makes sense. But people are selling books like this as children's books, you know? So, maybe it doesn't have to have a teachable moment, like my friend said. But anyway, for no good reason really, have been reading stuff about fairy tales this week. I don't know why. Essays about fairy tales. And one of them kind of ties in with these ideas where, like, the guy was talking about how the time structure of fairy tales is timeless, as we all know, and takes place in this, like, constant, imminent moment, like, and that effect is achieved with certain phraseology, like once upon a time, or there once was a whatever. But he also mentions how traditionally, like, fairy tales and like Grimm's fairy tales don't have teachable moments. They like utterly lack teachable moments. They're almost nonsensical. And he brings up this one traditional, like, old school Grimm's fairy tale, like before they got all cleaned up and Disney-fied, like all scrubbed clean and like la-di-dee la-di-da, you know. So they used to be really grotesque and really spooky and scary and violent and all sorts of things. And he gives this one example where it starts out like this. This is just to illustrate that they, like, did not have teachable moments, okay? So it's like, once upon a time there was a father and his two sons. His oldest son was good looking and smart, and the father preferred him. His second son was stupid. I'm not making this up. It's like, actually, like, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm not exaggerating. His second son was stupid, and the father could not trust him with any task. The father often sent the older son into the woods or down paths to pick up X, Y, and Z, but never the younger son. Often at night, they would tell stories together around the campfire with the local community, and the other townspeople would constantly say after stories, "That gives me shivers, that gives me shivers, that gives me shivers." And the little boy, the young son, thought to himself, why do people keep saying, "That gives me shivers, that gives me shivers, that gives me shivers"? What are shivers? One day around the campfire, after storytelling, the father said to the younger son, "You're good for nothing. You'll never be good for the family. You have no skills. You're worthless. Go and learn something." And the younger son said, "Okay, should give him shivers, but he doesn't get shivers. And the king gives him some challenge, and he succeeds. So the king says, okay, now as we have agreed, you can marry my daughter, the princess. And so the younger son's like, okay, and marries her. And then the princess says to her chambermaid, my husband wants to know what it is to shiver, and I need your help. So the chambermaid goes to the river, fills a bucket full of cold water and fish, and then brings the bucket to the princess's bedroom. The princess pulls back the sheets where the young son, the second son, is sleeping, her husband now, and the chambermaid throws the water and the fish onto him, which wakes him up, and he says, oh, now I know what it is to shiver. I'm shivering. The end. That's the story. And so this guy is just pointing out, like, I'm sorry, where is the teachable moment here? Like, there are no teachable moments in many Grimm's fairy tales in their traditional, like, original versions. And that story, as an example, I just found so baffling and confounding and delightful and nonsensical and so fun. It was entertaining to read. And there's no teachable moment. There's no teachable moment. Another essay I read on fairy tales, because like great writers can be really interested in fairy tales, and I think there's something interesting in the form of it, right? Like, it's so simple. Fairy tales are so simple. Or I often think, for example, like, books are simple to me compared to movies, say, or there's a certain flatness or like placeholderness in it that I'll explain in a second. That is a feature, not a defect, in my opinion. But like, I often think about out in a book as you read it is a co-creation between you, the reader, and the writer, because you're bringing your own memories and like understandings to the text and filling in details for things that are suggested by the text but not made explicit. Like, you get a character description, you're like, this guy is so tall and he's brown haired and blah blah blah. Clearly I'm a creative. This guy is so tall, la 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 la, and brown hair, and he's mean or whatever. But it's you, the reader, who is filling that all in and making something of it and imagining him and what he looks like and how he walks and all of that. Whereas movies are about a particular person because there's an actor filling that role and occupying that space and that shell and that character. And movies are set in a particular place and you see every detail. And in a book it's more like sketched roughly, but you get to fill it in as the reader. You do. And so I don't know, there's something about the flatness of writing that it like allows for co-creation, collaboration with the viewer that I find really interesting. And similarly, like, if here's movies, here's books, or like novels, modern day novels, and then we like flatten it even more. There's fairy tales, which like work in archetypes and like are just utterly simple. I guess that's why I've been interested in them lately. So, the other essay I read about fairy tales is about fairy tale as a form. So, it's by this woman named Kate Bernheimer. Never read anything by her before, but I found the PDF online. alongside flatness, we have abstraction. That's the second of the four. And so here I think she's pointing to like an almost elemental quality to the objects in a fairy tale. It's like the rose, the bear, the basket. That's it. Sometimes you'll get like the red rose, Snow White, like the Red Riding Hood, like, but that's really it. Like, unless a color even is marking an object as important, like a Red Riding Hood, literally the cloak that she's wearing, it's not used. It's all very pared down and super simplistic. If a book is like a sketch compared to a movie, like this, a fairy tale is like a few lines, that's it. No shading, no cross-hatching. Anyway, so flatness, abstraction, and then intuitive logic. So she points out how it's just kind of like there's a father and two sons, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then they did that, and it never really answers for you why anything is happening. And it doesn't matter, like, you're not given room to question the logic of anything. It's just an intuitive logic and like a kind of constant, almost hypnotic progression forward. And then the last thing, so flatness, abstraction, intuitive logic, and the fourth thing is normalized magic. So in other things, what word do I want? Other media, maybe, like, or other stories that aren't quite so abstracted and quite so working in the archetypes. Like Alice in Wonderland, for example, very absurd and stuff, but it's not as flat, as abstracted as a fairy tale. And another thing Alice in Wonderland does not have in common with a fairy tale is that there's a portal through which you enter this magical world. There's like a threshold you have to cross, which is the mirror. Or in Harry Potter, there's like the wizarding world, but there's also the Muggle world. And, they're kept kind of separate in a lot of ways. Of course, they overlap, but the magic in those worlds is remarkable and unusual. Whereas in fairy tales, no one's like, why is that rose? Why did that rose turn into a crow? How the F? Like, why is this woman able to drive around in a pumpkin? Like, what? How does she fit through that tiny hole in the bottom of the wall? What? Like, nothing's remarked upon, and there's no real explanation for any of that. It's all normalized as a part of the fabric of the world, and none of the characters question it. So, flatness, abstraction, intuitive logic, and normalized magic. All this to say, I've just been thinking about fairy tales lately, I guess, and I've had a hankering to reread Angela Carter. My mom had a copy of The Bloody Chamber when I was a kid. I remember reading it when I was probably a little too young to be reading it, because it's like this feminist, updated take on fairy tales, where like the women are like, so, and yeah, there's some real world elements in it, but it's basically fairy tales. I remember thinking it was so odd, and I've just had a hankering to reread super simple stories like that for some reason. Probably because they're soothing. But then I was wondering how they work, so that's why I started reading essays about them. And they don't really have teachable moments. So that's my conclusion, I guess. Like Cinderella, like, I don't know what the original Cinderella is like, the original version of it, like the gritty version. But what's the teachable moment there? Seriously, like, what is the teachable moment there? It's not be yourself. Anyway, I don't know. This has been a ramble, a late night ramble. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you're doing super well. If you have a favorite fairy tale or know anything else about fairy tales or have a recommendation for a particularly sinister Grimm's fairy tale that I should look up, please let me know. I would love that.